Like notes through the hourglass, these are the songs of our lives. Hello and welcome to Songs of Our Lives. I am Brad Rose. I am a musician, a composer, a writer, the founder of Foxy, Digitalis, and a bunch of other things. And I've been obsessed with sound and music for as long as I can remember. And on here, each week, I invite somebody on who I like, know, respect, think is interesting, admire, I don't know, a whole bunch of other things. Maybe it's all of those things. And we talk about songs that have meant a lot to them throughout their lives and learn so much and laugh and maybe sometimes cry and all sorts of other things along the way. This week, my guest is James Ginzburg of emptyset, Subtext Records, a million other things. And I'm so excited to have James on here because I've known James for over a decade now, and any excuse I can come up with to get him on Zoom and reconnect and talk about things, that's great for me. And this time, that's great for you, because this was a extremely fun conversation. I had to cut out a little portion at the beginning because it was already getting too long, but we talked a lot about his production and engineering work that he's been doing, which has been really exciting. I can tell you, if there's anything James is, you see that he is like mixed or produced, you should listen to it because it's probably really good. Things that are going on right now, he has a new emptyset EP that is coming out, and I don't know, James is very busy. As a note, if you really enjoy these and want a little bit more, highly recommend joining the Patreon, patreon.com/FoxyDigitalis, because each episode has an extra section with some other questions and conversation, and it's just, a little bit more. Plus, there's a bunch of other great stuff over there, and it really helps support the cause. Otherwise, we recorded this over Zoom. It was so much fun. Again, any excuse to talk to James is a great thing for me, and I hope you all enjoy it as much as I did. All right, my guest today is a musician, a producer, is in another timeline, is a huge folk star, and has the most glorious head of auburn hair you've ever seen. Please welcome to Songs for Our Lives, James Ginzburg. How's it going?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I had breakfast yesterday with some friends, and the waitress wouldn't stop referring to me as Aphex Twin. And I think having red hair has been the bane of my existence up until the point where I decided to own it and grow sort of aging musician shoulder length, ginger hair or whatever. But now it's come at a cost that I wasn't prepared to pay.
I feel like that's probably a thing you would get more in a place like Berlin than most places.
Yeah, that's fair. I've created this situation for myself doubly by growing it.
This is entirely your own fault. So I wanted to do this just because you and I haven't talked for a while, and but there's a new emptyset EP coming out, which is the first one in a while. Why now? Why was the timing right for this now?
That's an interesting question. I think, we've basically been working together in one form or another for about almost 20 years, I guess, I think 18 years now, sort of thing. And I think we went through various phases with it. I think we went through a phase where we were touring it very heavily and within a certain, a set of aesthetic constraints. We then sort of tried various ways of expanding those aesthetic constraints and, tying that into how we were performing the material. And I think, as probably is inevitable in any very, very close working relationship, it was always a very inspiring, but sometimes very, very intense process. And I think after our last record, which was in 2019, which was Blossoms, that we put out on Thrill Jockey. So basically, we were touring, we were trying to basically tour this record we made out of outputs from this machine learning system, and when the pandemic started, we were just kind of relieved that we wouldn't have to finish the tour, because I think to have completed the tour would have meant rethinking what we were doing substantially. But on top of that, I think we just, after working together so long and being in all those very particular kinds of stressful situations that in pressure cookers, that being in a project with where another person creates, there was a lot of there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff to go through, and I think we didn't really have it. We didn't really have a chance to kind of meet and really kind of like hug it out until Unsound last year in Krakow. And it was kind of one of those, like, I had played with another project I'm doing with Hilda Gudnadottir, her husband Sam Slater, and Rully Shabara from Sanyawa. And after the show, I think we just, we're kind of backstage at the rave, having a good cry. Had a good cry.
Beautiful.
And I think, got a lot of stuff kind of cleared up. And then since then, I think we wanted to dip our toes in the water. So I was like, well, why don't we just sort of put together like an EP? And then we started doing that. And then it's like, well, why don't we, arrange a show or two? And then we started doing that. And then I think very quickly, the kind of positive and fun parts of the collaboration, and I guess the kind of creative chemistry kind of was there again. So it just felt like a really kind of healthy and positive kind of thing to do. And I think both of us are kind of excited about the projects again, and we're talking about doing a new record, like a new album next year. So yeah, it's just kind of one of those things that kind of a blockage cleared, and it all sort of came together.
That's I know the feeling. I mean, I had to take a break from myself, so but I was just really, I never really even asked you, but there was in the back of my mind, I was like, I wonder if emptyset is just kind of done, and if it was, but
I thought it was. I mean, I think I kind of went through a many-year complicated sort of emotional processing of the kind of sense that the project was, had run its course. And it's interesting. I mean, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a very particular kind of discomfort, letting go of something that has contributed to such a huge part of your life. And I guess probably a huge part of your ego. And I guess that's probably the really uncomfortable part, is you're like, well, without this, what am I? Do I have a role? Do I have like a purpose? Am I now just really like, some kind of old dude, with a bunch of studio equipment in this house, you know what I mean? So am I a cliche? I have long hair now. Oh God, has it happened? So, it was a long process, even before the last record, I think I'd already started to kind of mourn it. But I feel I've probably got a peculiar habit of starting to mourn things long before they're gone, to somehow mitigate the pain of actually losing them. But
does it work?
No.
Yeah. Didn't think so, but I was hopeful for you and for anybody else who wants to try that. No, I totally know what you mean. And and I think we talked about this. We did an interview, I don't know, it was a couple years ago when your solo record came out, and how when you're able to kind of process those things and let go of things, then, and if you come back to it or you continue on or whatever, it feels different. Like I know for me, I'm less concerned about, I think the way you put it is like, you're not as worried about the points. Like the points are nice, like, but you're not as worried about all, those things don't feel as, they don't have this weight, or it's like, I don't know.
Totally. But it was interesting, even just like announcing this record, that I did go slightly mad for about 3 or 4 hours when we started kind of announcing it. And so again, like I'm certainly not immune to getting overwhelmed and emotional about this sort of weird idea of feeling exposed in some kind of very microcosmic kind of fashion or whatever. But So that's good. I guess I'm still alive, which is
well, and hopefully it doesn't like keep you up at night.
Once things went out, and it was clear that people seemed to like it, and I mean, even if I don't know, I don't think it's weird how like expectations snowball. Like, I think at first I was like, oh, I'll just throw a record out. I'm like, oh, I'll just do a few gigs, but who cares? And then suddenly it's more like, oh, cool, do people like it? Oh, cool, what's next? It's really, it's somehow, it's like cocaine, I guess. Like, you just think like, oh, what was that like? I don't remember what that was like. I'll just have a little, oh, yes, it's that thing.
Just have a little taste, like, oh, shit, okay.
Oh, it's that thing. All right, well, yeah, we'll probably don't need to do that again. And then,
Right.
So I guess stay off the drugs and stay off of the aspirational music career. Is the moral of the story.
Words to live by. We should get into the meat of this and start with, what is the first song you remember?
I might actually have to look at it because so one of the things that we talked about is that my memory for the name of music is so I've actually screenshotted all my answers because I knew I wouldn't be able to remember the actual names of songs. So the first song I remember hearing was it was the entire Flashdance soundtrack, but as a sort of miniaturization of that, I'm going to say Flashdance ... ellipsis What a Feeling by Irene Cara. And it's very strange. I feel like the first two records I ever heard were the Flashdance soundtrack because my mum had it, and the Beatles' White Album. And I experience a very similar emotion when I hear tracks on either of those records, which it's kind of like a straight line into like the earliest part of my mammalian core. Somehow, like, and those the synth lines that open that track, like, give me they resonate emotionally in the way that no other music can resonate emotionally. So it's kind of awkward when it comes on in a car full of people, and I'm taken back to the womb.
Yeah, I don't remember. Like, I don't remember the movie at all. I don't remember. I'm sure I've seen it, but this song, and I hadn't thought about this song in so long, and I kind of feel like I had as soon as, because I was listening to all the stuff you sent, and it was like, as soon as those opening synth lines, it was just like, oh, it's kind of remarkable. And the other thing, I was like, oh man, Irene Cara she could fucking sing.
Yeah. I mean, the whole soundtrack is like, it's a certified banger, like from beginning to end.
Yeah.
But it's confusing because obviously that informed my aesthetic sensibilities, but it is interesting that despite having such a sort of early conditioning with synthesized music, it really took until I moved to England at about 17 before I actually started listening to electronic music in any aware and earnest fashion. But I realized that Irene Cara has a lot to do with my entire life and career.
That's amazing. That's awesome. I love that. It's like the line from Emptyset to Irene Cara.
Direct line, straight line. Don't
direct line. No one would ever guess.
Yeah.
No, I've had this song stuck in my head for like 3 days too, because I'm just take your passion. It's very inspirational.
No, it makes me glad to have had the opportunity to live, but for one lifetime.
Right? Yeah. God. Well, we've already talked about crying once in this conversation, so I'm gonna guess that you're a bit of a crier.
I'm very, the emotion to tear pathway is very short. Sometimes I just cry for inexplicable reasons, like something about a particular way a table is like resting upon the floor. It just really cuts to the core of my being.
Well, I'm a big crier, so I understand, and especially since my kid was born. It's the same thing where it's like the most random things. I'll just be standing there like, am I getting teary-eyed? Yeah, over this.
Yeah, but I get it.
The way the light is in this room, I don't know.
I get it. Like, one of the reasons why I'm afraid to have children is that if I think about the idea of having a child, I start to cry.
It's fair. It is very intense. Well, okay. So, what's a song that makes you cry?
Yeah. So, there are a few songs that I come to mind. I think the one that I remember crying over most recently was "Who Wants to Live Forever" by Queen. I'm not a fan of Queen. I think I'm a fan of Freddie Mercury in principle. I think I'm like an anti-fan of Brian May. Not in principle, but just by regal edict. And but Yeah, I think basically that is the kind of emotional kind of core of the film Highlander. And if we recall Highlander, it's the protagonist, the Highlander, is played by a Spanish man pretending to have a Scottish accent against her from,
Mm-hmm.
Sean Connery, who is sorry, it's not a Spanish man. He's a Frenchman trying to have a Scottish accent,
Right,
and
right, right.
Sean Connery is a Scotsman trying to be Spanish. And but somehow, despite the film's very shoddy construction, acting, scenography, etc., I think it's the combination of the kind of rugged Scottish landscapes and that Queen song that mean that uh, the sort of the sentiment of basically the transience of kind of life. I guess within the
Mm-hmm.
concept of the film, it's the transience of life set against the kind of eternality of the Highlander. So the Highlander is almost like the kind of the universe itself, like watching the kind of like birth and death of all sort of manifestations. And
Right.
and so I think for some reason the combination of that film and the song, I can't hear it without like realizing that everything's going to come to an end. And it is. And other than it is a silly song, but I think it also doesn't help that I spend a lot of time in Scotland because my family's from there, and we've got a
Mm-hmm.
sort of family place up there, and I say up there, although from Berlin it's over there, I should
It's
say. But it is technically a little bit further north. But yeah. So the last time I was there in August, I had a couple of friends up from Slovenia, and so we wanted to get into the mood, right? So we watched Highlander. And then for
oh
the
my
next
gosh.
week, we proceeded to go on all kinds of hikes, some in the Highlands, some elsewhere. And the thing is, every moment of poignancy, of the sort of beauty of the heather going on the kind of rolling, sort of auburn, rainy hills of Scotland, was constantly soundtracked by Freddie Mercury wailing in my head. And the thing is, I was living with an eternal, singular, glistening tear coming out of my eyes, and yeah, it's all just fucking
I love it.
yeah, it's all just
I
the
love it.
Highlander. It's terrible, but I guess that
That's
just demonstrates something about like the simulacrum that we all inevitably
right.
become. And hey ho. But Freddie Mercury sings it like he means it. And I respect him for that.
I know. I just, yeah, I don't know. I love Who Wants to Live Forever. It's just as a message. I think that is, I don't know. It feels aspirational in a weird way because it is, yeah. And I also think, like, I can't imagine being in a band with Freddie Mercury and someone comes like, hey, you're going to sing the first verse of this song. And then, like, it's like, man, he must have pissed somebody off to.
I mean, but the first what is it, stanza is pretty. It's there's no time for us. There's no place for us. What is this thing that builds our dreams, yet slips away from us? I'm like, well, it's like, all right, Shakespeare, slow your roll, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, coming out swinging.
Yeah.
Oh man, God, I love the high. I had like because I don't associate this with Highlander at all.
Oh
And
wow,
so like now, but now that you said that, I'm like, oh, and I
is your daughter old enough to watch The Highlander?
I don't know. It's a weird thing when so she's 10 and we're constantly in this space of figuring out like is she old enough to watch this movie that we want to show her and I'm really bad about it.
Right. Okay. Like bad as in you sort of can't quite work out the line, or that sometimes you overstep and sometimes you understep, or
All of those things. Yeah, sometimes I mean it's hard to work out the line, and then it's yeah, and then it's like, okay, should we? I mean, and I showed her Star Wars at like 4, which was in hindsight not great, not a good plan. And so now I think I'm like hypersensitive to I mean, and now, but she's also at the age where she doesn't give a single shit about anything we like, or I mean, it's like we'll always be like, oh hey, I think you'd really like this. We're gonna like we really want to watch the movie The Goonies. Do you remember The Goonies?
of course, yes.
Yeah.
Was that a rhetorical question or what?
Well, yeah. Well, I was going to end the interview if you didn't. No, but we can't. There's some parts that maybe are scary. I don't know. I feel like I saw The Goonies when I was like 6, but also I'd say I turned out okay, but did I?
Well,
I
I think we also have to presume, though, a lot of the things that were like monolithic in our youth are the reasons why we've had to deprogram various kind of prejudicial biases
Right.
in the world, sort of thing. And I think Goonies is a good example
Yes.
of the sort of the torture that people of Asian descent had to suffer through in
Yes.
the 80s and the schooling
Absolutely.
system or whatever, you know what I mean? But I think, the
Yeah.
Highlander's good, clean fun. There is some
Okay.
gratuitous decapitations. There's one insinuation of, but definitely not articulation of sexual violence. And otherwise, there is, there's a little bit of light-hearted eroticism, I suppose, but it's very, I would say it's tastefully done enough that one wouldn't necessarily come away from it with a clear understanding of what sexual intercourse was.
Okay. Oh, my daughter has.
Where's this sentence going to?
Yeah. Well, so she was like, there was a period a couple years ago where she was super interested in babies and pregnancy and all those things.
Yeah.
And so Eden like bought this textbook about being pregnant, and my daughter like read it, looked at. She knows.
She understands.
So that's old news.
Okay. Well, I guess the weird thing is for me, like that film, it has a weird alchemy where it's. If you look at it shot by shot and you look at it performance by performance, it is objectively rubbish, but there's some strange kind of alchemy that happens. I don't know if it's in the editing or what, where you're just like, why did I enjoy that? Why, even like 30 years since the first time I saw it, maybe 35 years, why do I still enjoy it and why do I still cry? And I can't answer that. I still can't. I mean, I do. The same thing happens when I'm in Scotland. If I look at like a hill, I cry. So
yeah,
obviously something's going on there.
It's there are some things they're unexplainable, but they just are. They just are. And Highlander and its emotional impact on you is one of those things.
Wonderful. I'm glad that you understand me.
I do. Well, on the flip side of that, what's a song that puts you in a better mood?
I'm going to have to go with Allahu by Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. I think what's kind of interesting about kind of quality music in general is that, all the songs are either basically, sort of about God. They're sort of like devotional, and or they're about sort of romance, or they're kind of both about both things at the same time in a very ambiguous way. And so I think there's something that is like, it's music that evokes and articulates a kind of universal ecstasy. And I don't think, it's very, very, it's very difficult to not somehow have one's attention drawn towards the generally miraculous aspects of existing.
Yes.
When I listen to his music.
It's funny. So knowing that this is your pick for this, because this song is like, it's so incredible. Like, I feel like it could go in a number of categories here, but it's knowing that this is your pick for this. I'm like, oh, no wonder James and I get along. So my pick for this category was Govinda JJ by Alice Coltrane. And it's the same thing. It's like this sacred, it's this ecstasy, and I feel like these songs kind of channel a similar energy, but this in a very different way. Like this feels, I don't know, this feels like more sharp and focused, but it's all, this is, I think I had heard this once or twice in my life and I completely forgot about it. And I've been just listening to his stuff a ton this week because it's so good.
Yeah, really. I mean, there's so much of it, like, because it's the thing. All the recordings and live performances are kind of, they're all unique and they're all kind of preferable to studio recordings in some sort of way. And even I unfortunately never got a chance to see him when he was alive, but I went to see his nephew perform at the Barbican in London a few years ago, and
oh wow.
With a lot of the original bands. And again, it's just I don't think I've ever had an out-of-body experience while listening to music other than in that circumstance. Something very peculiar and very wonderful.
Yeah, there's something about it too. It's like the rhythm and his voice, and it all feels it's so relentless. Like it never lets up. And I think it just kind of pushes you to like out of body. I can totally imagine, especially experiencing this music live, and amazing. And I always said that if I ever became religious and converted completely on the basis of the music, I would totally like become Muslim because they got the best music.
Yeah, true story. I think something I've been thinking about a lot recently is just that I think Christians just got a really bad deal, because I think basically having a sort of to deal with this sort of, like the sort of divine made concrete in the form of Jesus, you just got a lot of more deprogramming to do.
Yeah,
like from a Jewish upbringing, you kind of got this God thing, and it's okay. So as soon as you can kind of forget, okay, it's not some dude in the sky, then you can basically just really quickly convert it into like, oh, there's a totality of some sort. The universe is kind of alive, yeah, whatever. Like the deprogramming process is, I think, a little bit easier. Whereas Jesus, you either kind of gotta like become him, which causes problems, or you've got to really like say goodbye. And either way, it's a lot more work,
Yeah. That's, man, getting deep on it.
sorry. I don't know
James.
how do I come back? There's a lot of wonderful things about the Christian tradition, and they've got a lot of good music too. But I'm just trying to establish minority rule.
Well, this so like I said, I feel like the answer for the last question could have easily been the answer to this next question, which is, what is objectively? Because, I'm very objective, and Foxy Digitalis is very objective and believe in objectively best things. What is objectively the best song of all time?
So I think this is it is an impossible question to answer, but I think in terms of a song that has everything, it's the kitchen sink. I'm going to go with George Clinton, Atomic Dog.
Oh my God, yes.
I think listeners beware. There are some remastered versions floating around that completely undermine the point of the track by adding superfluous treble. But I feel like there is something so like tightly funky, something completely acidically deranged. There's something it's poetry, it's rhythm, it's like the peak time for synthesis, the kind of the interplay between the melodic lines and the vocal lines like gives me shivers every time I listen to it. And it's peak mood, it's just peak everything, and there isn't, and it just keeps on going. It just keeps on going, and it's also like it's about cats and dogs, and
it's fun as hell. Like it's like technically and musically, it's this like deranged genius thing, and
it works. It works in a wedding. It works in a Cadillac.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It'll work. Yeah. It'll work eventually in my funeral. It just has. It's universal.
Oh my God! I want at my funeral. I want people just doing the like bow wow wow. That's amazing.
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say. When people talk about like I don't know, like all these like greatest artists ever, and you think people are always talking about. Predominantly you hear about a lot about it, like I don't know whoever, but like George Clinton is the things George Clinton has done in his career, unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh, I think there aren't many people whose careers have been so. Good from beginning to end, so influential, etc. And I think also, one of the things about this particular song that always gets lodged in my head is that, I have a very evasive cat living in my apartment who finds, every sort of nook and cranny to basically convince me that he's run away. And then every time I hear like, why must I feel like that? Oh, why must I chase the cat? I feel like there's some kind of like, I'm like Sisyphus kind of thing, bound to spend an eternity like looking under cushions and panicking because I can't find a cat. Though I'm sure that's not quite what he intended with that lyric.
I love it. Your cat, who is the true star of your Instagram.
Absolutely, feed. It's all I got.
Yeah, you got to give people what they want,
exactly,
or at least me. I don't know about everybody else, but
that's universal. I get there's a disproportionate amount of interest in my cat content over my personal and musical content, so I get the message.
Give the people what they want. give the people what they want. Okay, well, what is the song that you used to love, but now you find it, you listen to it now and you're like, oh, this is kind of cringy. This isn't so great.
I think, I used to be a DJ when I was young and foolish and had my whole life ahead of me. And I had credible phases of that, but also in the beginning, I had a very protracted, not so credible phase where I was, new school breaks and break DJ and producer. And I think my selection is more based on picking a track that represents the sort of fallacy of my decision-making process. So I don't know if this is obscure or not, because it was not obscure in the UK at the time, but it's by a group called the Plump DJs, and it's a song called Electric Disco. And I don't think that the song is in of itself terrible, but I think the entire world of music that I was participating in this phase was terrible. And I guess it brought me into contact with so many bad parties, so many terrible people, so much bad music. And, I listen back to this extensive part of my career. I put out, I don't know how many records, 20 maybe, or something like this. And, all the kind of blood, sweat and tears I spent, working on popular music to play at bad parties. I think about how, the good thing about all of that for me was that it was an extremely soul destroying and thus humbling experience. So I guess it made it easier to sort of like die inside a bit earlier. But well, there you go.
I'd never heard this song. This was outside of my world. And the thing that stood out to me is the bass sound. Like, it felt very familiar. And especially hearing you say that, because I was thinking about some of maybe the stuff you were doing, like Joker stuff from 2010.
Well, that was kind of recontextualizing the cringe into something a little bit more less cringy. But I think if you had been involved in dance music around the year 2000, that would have been one of the big records of the year, kind of thing. And in some sense, it's beautiful to see how quickly everything is forgotten.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I never heard of this track, never heard of the project. Early 2000s they had dance music.
They had some bangers within their context. They also very famously got. I say very famously for a group that's not famous anymore. They got bands from America. I think after playing what was the club called in DC? Come on, brain. No, that's not going to come to me. Nation. It did come to me. I think they basically got caught with some drugs or something like that, and they got banned from playing in the America during their sort of peak career or whatever. So that was pretty cool. Other than that, best forgotten.
Well, there you go. Well, kind of, sort of the other, not really the other way around, but maybe adjacent here. What's a song that most people or certain people, I don't know, people hate, but you love it?
That's also a kind of difficult question, just because I really have no context for what
I know.
Because most music I like is probably not popular, but so I think for me, I had to kind of reach a little bit deeper into the vaults and go for John Denver. I've chosen Annie's song just because it is one of his most saccharine pieces that still somehow, I think we probably had a John Denver's greatest hits record when I was a kid. He was on the Muppets as well. So that kind of gave him some,
John Denver and the Muppets is
some early cred with me kind of thing. So I think but I would generally say if that came on and I left it on, that most people would feel uncomfortable.
It's fair. I love John Denver too. I think it's I remember John Denver at the Muppets, and I think we had a John Denver's greatest hits record in my house. And the thing, of course, the only thing I ever think about this song anymore is Eden. For the longest time, she's really bad with lyrics, and she was convinced that the lyric was like a summer in springtime, which makes no fucking sense.
I like it though. It's kind of like climate change.
Yeah, but that's true. John Denver was ahead of his time.
I just find the whole John Denver story also peculiar, kind of his sort of death in some kind of strange plane.
Yeah,
but I think the other thing about this song is just the tone of the of the lyrics, it's quite peculiar. If I'm going to just read the first two stanzas. It's, just as a kind of open invitation, saying that. So, you fill up my senses like a night in the forest. Usually, fear is what fills up my sentences in a night in the forest. But like the mountains in springtime, it's fair. Like a walk in the rain could be the same thing. Like a storm in the desert. Okay, so the storm in the desert, that feels like a kind of rare thing, right? A walk in the rain,
rare and intense.
Walk in the rain doesn't seem. I don't know, mountains in springtime, whatever, like a sleepy blue ocean. I'm not really sure about that. But then you fill up my senses, come fill me again. So that is a very peculiar invitation.
It is.
Because I think now we've kind of left the purely sensual and we've moved into the sexual. And then and it seems to be one that's it's an invitation to receive, but then the next stanza, it's like, come let me love you. Let me give my life to you. So that's very active.
Yes.
But then passive again. Let me drown in your laughter. Let me die in your arms. I would be very suspicious of a lover who asked me to pass away while held them. Yes, unless they had an accident or something. Let me lay down beside you. Let me always be with you. I mean, all right. Come let me love you. Come love me again. Because I think when they say that, let me always be with you, they rarely think about time spent on the toilet.
Right. Come on, that's true.
That's commitment.
Love.
That's commitment.
Hey,
I respect it. No. I respect it. I guess we just can't really relate to that level of commitment.
I've been married for 20 years, and we are a strictly door closed in the bathroom.
Everybody needs a bit of space. Everybody needs a bit of space.
Everybody needs a bit of space. Yeah, no, see, this is one of those songs that's just been sort of like there as in my life forever. So I hadn't, but that's now that you've stopped and read the lyrics like that, it is very strange.
I guess it's also a little bit incoherent. It's bad poetry, but that's fair enough. But I always thought that it was like a night in the forest, but like a night, like as in knight errant, So I thought it was more about being like noble, like he's evoking.
Oh, yeah.
But it's more just about it's nighttime in the forest.
The forest the forest at night is terrifying.
Yeah, objectively.
Like, objectively terrifying. Yeah. This is why I don't go camping, among other many reasons. But
it's like you fill up my senses like a scream in a vacuum.
I'm intrigued by that version of the song. That was the pre-edited version. Well, I could see in a some world that was the pick for this next question, for some people. But what is the most romantic song?
So I went with Jeff Buckley and Elizabeth Fraser. All flowers in time bend towards the sun. I did initially have that one down as the one that always makes me cry because it does both. I think, I'm more into like Elizabeth's bits than Jeff's bits, to be fair, but somehow it all works as a kind of conversation. Also the kind of, so knowing the kind of context and the background of like that record and their relationship and everything, I think it feels like one of those strange kind of duets that is more like an artifact of two people experiencing intense emotions rather than something that's constructed.
Yeah. It's it's the first sort of big note that she hits. That's like when, I don't know, it just kind of everything stops or something when I'm listening to it. And didn't she think this wasn't ready to be released or something? I don't know. I thought I read that somewhere, but I mean, obviously, I don't think it was never really officially released. Was it?
Think so.
I don't know.
I mean, I came across it on YouTube really years ago. I think during a breakup as well, and I think I just basically listened to it on repeat for a couple of days and just cried for like 2 or 3 days. Yeah.
It's pretty perfect as far as like a song goes. And like this is one of the ones, like I said, this is one of the ones I think this could have been in many categories and it would have been like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, the lyrics as well. Sorry, each time we pull up a song, I'm just playing lyrics. Uh, so the lyrics, my eyes are a baptism. Oh, I am filth, and sing her into my thoughts. Oh, phantom elusive thing, oh. All flowers in time bend towards the sun. I know you say there's no one for you, but here is one. It's pretty. I would say, as a literature major, I would say it's a strong sonnet.
Yeah, it's certainly better than John Denver's poetry.
I would say, there's space in the world for it all, but yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah. No, I hadn't thought about like you. I came across it on YouTube. I don't know how many years ago, and just I think I just listened to it over and over again. And then I don't know. I hadn't thought about it in a while, and then putting it back on this week, it was kind of like having that experience all over again in a way. And it was just. It kind of, I don't know. It's like one of those songs that just sort of stops you in your tracks.
Totally.
Awesome song. I'm glad you picked it, because now I'm going to try to remember to listen to it more often. Well, I mean, I can't listen to it all the time because it's also, like you said, it's also a bit like destroying.
That's it's definitely one of those like, are you all right, man? Kind of songs. Like...
Yeah. Right. It's like you've been listening to this like over and over again. Like maybe you should talk to somebody. Well, what is the song that changed your perspective on an artist?
I wasn't really sure how to interpret this question. I think so. Inevitably, I decided to interpret it as in a negative sense.
Okay. No, see, that's the great thing. Like, I think of it as in a positive sense, but yes, this is what I'm here for.
So for me, as somebody who was like 13 in 1994, like, I think the Wu-Tang Clan, like, still to this day, they hold a very particular and formative place in my, sense of music and thinking about music, etc. But I left America in '98, and that was around when Wu-Tang Forever came out. And I think one of my sort of last memories of being in America was listening to Wu-Tang Forever album in a car and feeling slightly confused why, I didn't really relate to that much on it, and trying to, not knowing much about music production, just understanding there was something different about the music production that I didn't quite relate to. But, there was a few good songs like Triumph, etc. But I think I remember being in England and seeing the video for Gravel Pit by the Wu-Tang Clan on television. And then I was like, yeah, they were past peak Wu-Tang. We're and I think it's weird because all those guys are like 10 years older than me. And so weirdly, they're sort of like this kind of oracular unit, which shows me, in a macrocosmic sense, what the rise and fall of like musicians and their careers are, and how time treats musicians, etc. And for example, there was like a two-series, two-season television series about the Wu-Tang that the RZA produced, which I was completely glued to it. And but again, it's this kind of weird mixture between like nostalgia and horror about time, the passage of time, and and like I don't know, like. Yeah, so the Gravel Pit, it hit me pretty hard because they're all dressed up in kind of Fred Flintstone era kind of, bedrock type of.
That was weird.
And I think if we get to some lyrics, it's check out my gravel pit, and this is depicted in the video as them being in some kind of quarry. Check out my gravel pit, a mystery unraveling. Wu-Tang is the CD that I travel with. Don't go against the grain if you can't handle it. So what we've got there is an A implied but not complete A rhyme scheme, which doesn't really, the mystery unraveling bit, I don't really see how we, where does that, where am I supposed to rhyme that? How am I supposed to understand that concluding foot of that couplet? I'm not entirely sure. But, so I just I felt a little bit let down, and I felt like I can't any longer take them seriously as a creative force. And so that was the end of some kind of phase of my youth.
No, I think that I think that's such an interesting just concept, or a thing of, where there's an artist or someone who, until a certain point, it's just like, they're amazing or what, but that moment where it's, yeah, it turns to where it's like, okay, you're past your prime, and it's such a weird feeling.
Yeah, I think
that
some of them manage. I mean, like Ghostface Killer. I think he managed much better. I think Raekwon, even quite late on had I think only built like in Volume 2 or whatever it was called. That that was it was solid. But I just think that like. Yeah, I mean, weirdly, I feel like the bio series did a lot of filling in the gaps in my knowledge, fictional or otherwise, about the Wu-Tang Clan. So I understood that there were a lot of forces working against them continuing a kind of to operate as such a large band. And I too was in large hip hop bands when I was in the year 2000, and I very well understood the pressures of trying to keep the unit together. So.
Wait, what?
My first project was this like hip hop bands, but I was the sort of producer. I wasn't on the I wasn't on the mic.
You weren't on the mic.
I wasn't in the cipher somehow. But but I was on the MPC 2000. So yeah, I
had no idea.
My beats were slamming, But that was my first love, my first passion.
Well, I had no idea. See, I'm learning all sorts of new things.
Flashdance plus the Wu-Tang equals emptyset.
Right. Yeah, there you go. Now, if I write a review of it, I'm just going to talk about those things a lot.
Yeah.
And people
are like, oh, yeah, Pansonic. And I'm like,
No. Irene Cara. That's really... Listen to the open synth line of Flashdance thing. You'll get it. Well, we've been talking a lot about lyrics, and sometimes in a good way, sometimes not in a great way. What are your favorite lyrics, whether it's a song or just like a specific line?
Yeah, I find this question like really challenging, because I think I don't necessarily like relate to music lyrics. Like I never remember anybody else's lyrics other than songs that I've written. Even then, it's a challenge. So I think probably as a consequence of that, I decided to go with "The Winds and the Rain" as sung by Alfred Deller. I don't know what you would call him. He's sort of pseudo castrato, but I'm not sure what that's actually the term for the range in which he's singing. But it's up there. It's way up there. And the lyrics themselves are just taken straight out of Shakespeare. So I guess that's just one of those things that you can't really. I just take it back to the bard. you can't really because otherwise, I don't know. I mean, I really like most of the lyrics on the Liquid Swords record by Jizza, but that was a difficult one. But it's very difficult for me to even remember lyrics.
So the winner, like Alfred Deller, I never even heard of any of this.
He is gangster, and he's gangster as fuck.
So this song and like his voice, it's unbelievable. It feels like, I don't know, it's like the sound of like ghosts singing in the ether or something. It is so otherworldly.
I guess like technically like he's a countertenor. I think I think castrato was like, kind of, it was cancelled a long time before that sort of thing. So it's basically like, it's kind of it was sort of a Renaissance revival or Baroque revival of kind of music in Britain, and it's kind of like if you're into lute, if you're who isn't, you know what I mean? If like on the Dale you like to listen to Greensleeves or whatever, then I think Deller will appeal to you. But there's something very particular about this piece in general, that the lyrics and his style somehow combine to be extremely haunting. And one of the things that irritates me a little bit up to is just the concluding couplets, because it is just a bit of Shakespeare, so it starts referencing the play like that they're in. But up to that bit, because so basically the whole lyric kind of works alternating between a line and then Hey Ho, the Winds and the Rain. So it's like wind that I was and a little tiny boat with the hey ho, the wind and the rain. So basically, if you ignore all the with the hey ho and the wind and the rain, which are gangster objectively,
Yeah.
the lyrics themselves: wind that I was and a little tiny boy, a foolish thing was but a toy. With hey ho, the winds and the rain, for the rain it raineth every day. But when I came to man's estate, gainst knaves and thieves, men shut their gate. With a hey ho, the winds and rain, for the rain it raineth every day. But when I came alas to wive, by swaggering I could never thrive. So basically, he's basically saying it like that the world's not open to somebody who's chosen to live that life, and I guess that's something I think we can all relate to.
Yeah. That's I've been having a bit of a weird moment with like early music, medieval music. So this is something I intend to explore more, because I was, again, like I said, it for lack of a better phrase, it felt very British. Like, I'm not surprised I hadn't heard of it in some way.
All right. Yeah.
And I don't mean that as like a good thing or a bad thing.
Well,
just,
the meaning of the word British changed a lot in my mind. I think before 2016, the word British was a kind of concept that expanded the sort of regional, like whether it was Welsh, English, Scottish, Northern Irish concept of being in the United Kingdom, to something that me as a kind of, child of a Scottish mother and, Jewish American father could somehow, with a British passport, could somehow be included in. So I can think, I'm British, and that's like just an expansive concept.
Mm-hmm.
But now post Brexit, I just see like the notion of Britain to be a kind of sort of rotting imperial, I see it more of as like a cynical attempt to sort of entrap more people and more identities into a sort of, English imperial concept. So I don't know, British could be a pejorative now as far as I'm concerned.
That's fair.
British
That's fair.
beef,
This felt very much like a thing that would have, I would have been a thing over there, or like more. I
guess it just depends if you're in the conservatory or what. You know what I mean? I guess.
Well,
that's a weird thing about music. Is
me? That's where I
have so much spend your afternoons. Yeah.
But the main point is like it. I thought it was incredible, and I started reading about him, and I was like, I want to hear more of this, because like
if you find any other killer jams by Deller, feel free to share them.
Okay.
I haven't done that kind of due diligence to really go into his extensive catalog.
Yes. So yes, I will. Any Alfred Deller bangers that I come across, I will pass to you in exchange for pictures of your cat.
Sounds like a deal.
What's the song that you have or you can listen to the most?
I mean, I don't think that this is necessarily a song per se, but I think the thing that I've listened to the most in my life is Brian Eno's Thursday Afternoon. I think because it's, I think it was the first CD ever made, and so he made something that was exactly the length that a CD could play, and it's basically a loop, and I have a very mixed feeling about Brian Eno in general. A friend of mine was like, "Oh, why don't you come see Brian Eno play at the Philharmonia here?" And like tickets were €230. And like, why would I do
right.
why would I do that? But at the same time, for someone who does seem to have been at the right place at the right time numerous times, I can't get away from the fact that the record is completely perfect. And I've just had to forget that somebody made it. I guess it sort of comes out of the same sort of approach and period as, music for airports. And remember my friends around the corner here, they're friends with Connie Plank's son, and they were doing a documentary about Connie Plank, and I kind of overheard some of the outtakes from the music for airport sessions. And there was like one piece on it that was like such a fucking banger that didn't make it on. I was like, it was possibly the best thing I'd heard ever. And, but I guess what I sort of take from that, rightly or wrongly, is I think maybe, we've got a lot more to thank Connie for that music. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a horrible person. I'm sure Brian's a very talented man. And but yeah. But anyways, I just think it's something that dropped from Pluto, and it exists, and now I can listen to it without a break for 12 hours and never get bored of it.
I always think there's like some pieces of music, and I talked about this recently on this with some other people about different pieces of music, but it feels like they just sort of exist in the like the universe or something, and they're just there to tap into whenever you want to or need to. Like I was talking about it yesterday in relationship to Rainbow and Curved Air, which is obviously very different than this, but it's like, yeah, it's a perfect piece of music to me. But this has that same feeling to me where it's just like, yeah, I don't know that I could listen to Rainbow and Curved Air for 12 hours on repeat. I might start to go crazy because of
well, but it's I think it'd be a pleasant kind of craziness.
Yeah, that's true. I think it would. Yes, it would be. It would be like a really good trip.
Yeah.
But this is like, yeah, it feels like it can just exist when you need it for as much as you need it, and it's weirdly perfect. It's hard in some ways. It's hard to believe that like a human made this music.
Yeah, but I guess a human didn't really make this music because it was basically just tape loops. You know what I mean? So
well, that's fair.
It's kind of more like, I guess it's generative music for but some person did some editorial and made some decisions, of course, but. I was thinking about this back to Greensleeves. There's obviously an apocryphal. It's an obviously apocryphal story about Greensleeves, but the idea was that Greensleeves was overheard by somebody when the fairies played it, and that's how it sort of came into being. So somehow this idea that this piece of music existed in this kind of spectral realm tangential to the human realm, and it had just been overheard. It sort of undermines this idea of authorship, that this sort of music just somehow exists innately in the universe, kind of thing. And so I think any time you ever experience like just having a fragment of music come into your mind and then desperately trying to get it down and maybe not being able to, that this sort of sense. I can't say that I've ever had the feeling that like I decided to do something and then it happens and then I get to take credit for it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't, like it's the nice bit about making music is more like going back to it a couple of years later and being like, oh, wow, I don't really understand how that happened, but that's really good. That's like the best experience I can have of making music.
Totally. Yeah. I interviewed Laraji a few years ago and he talked about it as like, he pulls music from the air. That's how, and I thought that I was like, okay.
It's nice. Thanks.
If it's good enough for Laraji, it's good enough for me. Well, okay. So what is a lyric you thought you knew, but learned it was something else? And when you learned what it was, it blew your mind.
So I think Boogie Chillin' by John Lee Hooker was, is a tricky one because I think also that's probably objectively the best record ever kind of made. But there's, I'm just going to get the lyrics up so I don't misquote them. So I guess I'm listening to this piece of music since I was a little kid. And I used to think the lyric was, well, my mama, she didn't love me. I used to stay out all night long. Oh, Lord. Right. So I was like, oh, that's really sad. I was like, that's really sad. But then I sort of decided like at some point I was going to sing the song. And then I looked at the lyrics and I was like, oh, it's my mama, she didn't apostrophe loud, like she didn't allow me just to stay out all night long. Oh Lord. And which makes much more sense because later on
it changes the entire meaning.
Because later on in the final bit where he's saying, I heard Mama and Papa talking and I heard Papa tell Mama, let that boy boogie woogie. It's in him and it's got to come out. And he felt so good. I was like, well, that's nice. His dad seems to love him, but it doesn't solve the problem that he has a loving mother. But now I understand that he had a very loving mother. It's just that she didn't let him stay out all night long to boogie woogie, and it took it took his father's intervention to allow him to boogie woogie at the Henry Swain Club down on Hastings Street. And so yeah, it's a much happier song than I presumed it to be.
Yeah, his mom was just trying to look out for him in the way that she thought she needed to.
Yeah, I have to say I was deeply
That's
pleased,
hilarious.
deeply pleased to find out that his mama did love him. It is the blues after all.
Well, right, you wouldn't have batted an eye if it was really about like my mama didn't love me. It's like, huh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, I guess that
John Lee
happens.
Hooker singing blues. Oh, that's great. I love that. Okay, well, we're in the home stretch here. We got 2 more to go. What is the song that means the most to you? Not necessarily because of the song itself, but because you associate it with someone or a certain experience or, something like that.
So I'm going to go with Future Sound of London by Papua New Guinea. And I think, like, for me, the kind of it's the kind of closest direct articulation of the feeling I had in the 90s in relationship to rave and to ecstasy. And, like, I guess for me, it's less about the thing that it evokes that's meaningful is a kind of a sort of cross section of emotions. I guess there's some weird mixture of kind of euphoria and sort of hope and optimism for a future, some sort of sense of like a very present kind of fictional modernity, that kind of way that even when you look back at the 90s, it seems so like technologically provincial, so to speak. Like at the time, you just felt so aware of the sort of emergence of a new set of possibilities that were, almost, without exception, disappointing. But, so I think for me, like, even though that song came out quite a few years before I actually moved to Britain and sort of had that sort of formative experience, it still, like, just puts its finger right into that part of my brain where, all those sort of latent pockets of MDMA still lurk. And yeah, so I guess it's I don't know if I even want to call that nostalgia. It's more just like kind of some sort of time travel. I hope that isn't nostalgia. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a tragedy.
Yeah. This this was not a world I was ever any part of. Like I got into electronic music much later. I can't believe this is from 1991. I kind of when I was listening to it the other day, I was like, when did this come out? I was genuinely shocked.
That whole album that it's on is like killer from beginning to end. It's like so prescient. It's like, I don't know. Yeah. And I think it still completely stands up. I mean, I guess obviously with this sort of weird cyclical nature of electronic music, I just don't feel it's not like anything much has kind of really bettered it in a sense. Like I feel like the Orbital kind of also were, occupying a similar, let's say, emotional palette with their music in, the same period and into the 90s kind of thing. But yeah, somehow that record, and also the fact the record was a hit, is quite astounding kind of thing. But yeah.
Yeah, I like 19. I'm thinking back to 1991. I don't know. My brain can't make that connection that this is 30 years old. Because like somebody could send this to me and be like, "Oh yeah, this is this new thing that's coming out next month," and I would just be like, "Oh, okay." Yeah, I mean, and not just because of the, like you said, this sort of cyclical nature and the, some of the stuff is coming back or whatever. Just there are so many parts of it to me that still sound contemporary, and I don't know. It blew me away. I'm gonna have to listen to the whole album now because
it's great. It's a really great album.
Well, we've come to the last question, and I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What is your favorite song?
So I'm just going to go back to Boogie Chillin', and I think for me, it's such a like a reduced sound palette. It's just kind of got the essence of song in it. It's got the kind of it's so intensely. How do I to express this? It's like. It is like a kind of masterclass in like groove carrying everything. It's like the feel of his guitar playing, the kind of this thump of his foot. It's all that the entire underlying music is, but it's complete. It's 100% complete. And I guess also emotionally, like the in a sense that the kind of the lyrics are, I guess, mundane when you kind of get down to the actual arc of it. It's like, mom doesn't want you to go out. You're talking about, there's this club and like everybody's fucking, having the time of their life there. And then finally you have this thing where like you're seen, your dad says like, no, this is him. This is what he's going to do. Like, let him do it. There is that kind of like, I guess it's sort of like the arc where like, dad hugs you and tells you he loves you and that he's proud of you kind of thing. But somehow the emotion conveyed by this song itself and by the performance is like, it feels like life and death. It feels like, like kind of agony and ecstasy. And I guess there's somehow the capacity for this sort of, mutual presence of sort of, the mundane, sung as if it was sacred and made sacred by how it's performed. I think, it just becomes something that's like, it's like essential, entirely essential.
Mm-hmm. No, I think I totally agree with that. I love this song, and I forget how much I love, like, just listening to him play. He's so good, but it seems so effortless. Like it's an extension of his like body or something. And I mean, I don't know. Like I always feel like, and I'm guilty of this too. Like people talk about like something seeming otherworldly, and they are often talking about, we see it a lot with like experimental music and stuff like that. But it's like, this to me is like otherworldly, that there's, in some ways, this very simple thing conveys and does so much. I mean, and it's not simple. Like I don't want to diminish. I'm not trying. That diminishes what it is. But he's so good. God, he's so good.
It's just whatever thousands of years of like of human essence and hundreds of years of pain and. But just distilled down into, I mean, I think for me, I see it's like kind of, a Japanese calligraphy. It's like the simplest stroke that conveys the most. And I kind of feel like as a inspiration for how to approach not just making music, but most things in life, I really look at that. It's just like kind of a golden ratio. It's just 100% perfect. And it's very inexplicably perfect somehow.
I think that is the perfect place to end. Before we go, the new emptyset EP is out when? October
20th.
And you guys are playing some shows?
Yeah, we're just playing a few shows for all time's sake. We're doing Berlin Atonal this weekend, September 16th, and we're playing in London at Village Underground on November 5th, and then at Bristol on the Ides of March 2024. And that's March 15th.
Heading back to Bristol on the Ides of March. All right.
Beware. Yes.
As it should be. I don't know. I have no idea why it should be that. Okay. Well, thank you for doing this. This was
my pleasure.
A whole lot of fun. And
lovely.
Yeah.
Cool. Really lovely to talk to you. Take care, bud. Bye.
Once again, a million thanks to James for taking the time out to do this, especially emptyset had a big show in Berlin the day after or something, and so he had a lot going on, and it's really kind of him. You should follow him on Instagram for all sorts of updates on what he's working on, and perhaps most importantly, pictures of his wonderful, beautiful cat. And as a reminder, if you go to our YouTube channel, link is in the show notes, you can find a playlist of this episode and every other episode, so you can listen to all the songs we talk about, and maybe some of it'll make more sense, or maybe it'll make less sense. I don't know. That's up to you. As for me, you can, of course, find me on Instagram, Twitter, Bluesky, Mastodon, shoot me an email, all of those things. As I mentioned, patreon.com/Foxy Digitalis. You get some extra stuff, supports the cause. It's good for everybody, right? I hope you enjoyed this, and until next time, as always, just keep listening to whatever the hell you want.